The Catholic Church has always also been thoroughly infiltrated by homosexuals. Just recently, Father Enrique Rueda came out with this text documenting the infiltration of every facet of our society by this so-called gay liberation movement. And he has devoted 2 entire chapters to the infiltration of churches in general and the Catholic Church in particular. And this information he drew from the publications of the so-called gay liberation movement itself. He went right to their offices and to their headquarters. Apparently he thought he was going to join them. And they gave him all this information by which he has documented how our church in America has been thoroughly infiltrated by homosexuals. This is why there are so many lawsuits against priests for child abuse, sexual abuse of boys. Last summer it was 50. This summer it rose to 134 civil suits against priests for these sexually abusing children. And Father Rueda says not only priests, but perhaps even bishops have been drawn into this homosexual ring. Their whole purpose, they know they're not going to get the Pope to come out and approve of sodomy. But they think that by infiltrating the clergy, they can neutralize the Church's teaching, just as the modernists did with the pill. You ask most Catholics today, what's the Church's teaching on contraception? Well, they're really not sure. It's been so compromised by the modernists. Well, this is what the homos want here in America. They want to be accepted. They want their lifestyle accepted as a normal, ordinary, everyday, alternate lifestyle. They know the only way they can achieve that goal is by infiltrating the Catholic Church, which is the greatest obstacle to their acceptance. Father Rueda points out how the homosexuals have infiltrated religious orders. The Jesuits, they've infiltrated the Franciscans, the Christian Brothers, and of course the Dominicans. When I was in the seminary in the early 1950s, my superior in the seminary said at that time we were being inundated by homosexuals. And he was doing his best to weed them out. He wrote a letter pleading with our major superior to help him. The letter was never answered. So he wrote a letter to our provincial council pleading with them for help to weed out these homosexuals. They never answered his letter. I'm afraid that we had been so taken over by communists at this time, they rejoiced to have us infiltrated by homosexuals. It's so bad today that a good boy can't even get in my province. I've talked to some of the finest young men I have ever met who were turned away from our novitiate. They wouldn't let them in. No, to become a Dominican in the central part of America today, you've got to be effeminate, or at least you've got to approve of homosexuality as an alternate lifestyle.
A blockbuster report has just emerged, produced by a PhD priest at the Pontifical University in Krakow, Poland, where he says he was asked to prepare this report by various bishops and even cardinals. It details how the secretive homosexual lobby of priests and bishops in the church is trying to gain a stronger foothold in his native Poland, and how much damage has already been done by them in other parts of the world throughout the church. From active homosexual clergy among priests to active homosexuals among bishops, and those that are friendly to them, that protect them and promote them, as well as those who had been hidden and covered up the resultant child sex abuse at the hands of predator homosexual clergy. A number of these reports circulating essentially about a homosexual mafia homosexual underground in the Vatican, around the Vatican, and a number of secular media have certainly picked up on the story. They're the ones who sort of broke it. But here in the United States, sort of true to form, for the most part, the Catholic establishment media has either totally ignored the story or put a little spin on it that really doesn't have anything to do with. It doesn't really have anything at all to do with what the reality of the story is. Look, if there are compromised clergy working in the Vatican, and we know for a fact, now lots of people said, this is all speculation. Well, no, it's not speculation. When there was the case 2 years ago of a Monsignor who videotape was made, and I don't want to get gross on the air here, but anyway, there was video proof of him acting out in a homosexual fashion. He was placed in he was in an office in the Vatican, dealing with homosexual prostitutes. It is simply look, if you wanted to throw up names and say, here's this certain cleric and this is the gay bar he goes to or something, but out of charity you want to kind of hold back on some of that information. But this is absolutely no secret in and around Rome.
According to Pope Francis, there is a gay lobby in the Catholic Church, and it needs to be taken care of. The comments were published from one of the Pope's private meetings.
CNN reports Pope Francis told a group of officials privately, in the Curia there are holy people, but there is also a stream of corruption. The gay lobby is mentioned, and it is true, it is there. We need to see what we can do.
Si scrive tanto della lobby gay. Io ancora non ho trovato nessuno che mi dia la cartella d'identità in Vaticano con gay. Dicono che ce ne sono. Credo che quando uno si trova con una persona così deve distinguere il fatto di essere una persona gay del fatto di fare una lobby, perché le lobby tutte non sono buone. Quello è lo cattivo. Se una persona è gay e cerca il Signore e ha buona volontà, ma chi sono io per giudicarla?
Pope Francis is home at the Vatican tonight, just back from Brazil, where 3 million flocked to see him on World Youth Day. On the flight back, a relaxed pontiff made global headlines with some humble remarks, reaching out to gay Catholics in a way no pope has ever done before. ABC's Dan Harris has the story.
After being greeted like a rock star in Brazil, preaching to millions on Copacabana Beach,
In nome del Padre, del Figlio e del Spirito Santo.
this new pope, who has gone to great lengths to project simplicity and openness, gave a remarkable press conference on the flight back to Rome. Such a striking difference from his often timid predecessor, who only took pre-selected questions from the press. Pope Francis laughing and joking with reporters, speaking off the cuff for 80 minutes. And here was the moment that is getting so much attention.
Se una persona è gay
The Pope saying, quote, "If someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" Compare that to Pope Benedict, who called gays objectively disordered, or John Paul II, who called homosexual acts against natural law. Now, while Pope Francis's comment is making global waves tonight, it's important to note the Pope said nothing to suggest acceptance of gay sex or any other change in church policy. The Pope also made unusually warm overtures today to divorced people who he said should receive the sacraments.
Francis says the Catholic Church has become obsessed, even small-minded, when it comes to socially divisive issues like abortion, contraception, and gay marriage. He says he's been criticized for not speaking more about these issues since his election in March. Now, in this wide-ranging interview, the Pope says it's time to emphasize compassion over condemnation.
Impegniamoci tutti a incoraggiare gli sforzi.
It is considered a dramatic shift in Vatican tone. Pope Francis says the Catholic Church is too focused on preaching about abortion, homosexuality, and contraception, and should show more compassion.
The Pope's comments are a massive step in the right direction.
For parishioners like Andrew McKeon and others we spoke to attending evening Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan, it is a refreshing message.
The Catholic liturgy is a very good one, but their social view of things is not very good. So if they can improve that, it would be the church. It would be the church. It would be the church.
It's now the future. You have to change with the times.
I agree, because you need to love everybody, and it's just important that everyone is one.
Described as remarkably blunt, the Pope's 12,000-word interview appeared in Jesuit journals in 16 countries. In it, he sets out his priorities, saying, quote, "We have to find a new balance, otherwise even the moral edifice of the Church is likely to fall like a house of cards, losing the freshness and fragrance of the gospel."
The Pope is calling for a sea change in the Catholic Church. In a candid interview, Francis says there is too much focus on same-sex marriage, abortion, and contraception.
The pontiff says it's time for the church to return to its roots. This morning he celebrated Mass and he spoke of material things, saying, quote, "Love of money is the root of all evil." Mark Phillips is in London. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gail, Charlie, Nora. Well, we've known from the beginning of this papacy that Pope Francis was the un-Benedict, different in so many ways from his predecessor, approachable, not reserved, the people's Pope. This surprising papal interview seems to show that he wants the Catholic Church to change as much as its leader has.
Pope Francis wrapped up a trip to Brazil recently that coincided with the Catholic Church's World Youth Day. Hundreds of thousands turned out to greet the Pope, and he urged the faithful to shun materialism, focus on the poor, and build a world that is more just, united, and fraternal.
But the new approach to the Church's proselytizing, published in Catholic magazines around the world, has put material world meat on the ecclesiastical bones. We cannot insist only on issues related to abortion, gay marriage, and the use of contraceptive methods, he warned. We have to find a new balance, or the Church is likely to fall like a house of cards.
A pope to lead the Roman Catholic Church in the 21st century.
The people's Pope. A pope of this world, not the next.
Just is that this is a more worldly pope than any one that we've ever had before.
A pope of this world, not the next. A pope of this world, not the next. A pope of this world, not the next.
We have some breaking news right now. It comes from the papal aircraft. Pope Francis making a significant statement showing conciliation to gay priests and gays and lesbians all around the world. But I spoke with Cardinal Dolan here in New York several weeks ago, and I said, what would you say gay couple that comes to you and says we love each other and we want to live out that love. He said, I love you too and God loves you. They're trying to reach out, trying to find ways to include everyone in that church. They're trying to reach out, trying to find ways to include everyone in that church now.
But the Pope coming out and making those types of statements like that, and we had a kind of an indication from him early on that he was going to be a different type of leader.
Yes, and I really feel like, again, the church, they realized that they had come to something of a crossroads and that they would have to make gestures such as these. And again, it's interesting, not only did he say it, but how it was said, again, in very relaxed back and forth.
And it comes off that amazing trip to Brazil this week where he was thronged, just,
especially the young people.
All over him, absolutely.
Big headline in the moment.
Back now in the spin, and just 7 months into his papacy, Pope Francis is adored by much of the faithful and the non-faithful alike. In addition to his humble living and social outreach, the Catholic Pope is also making headlines for his relatively progressive views on abortion, gay marriage, and women's role in the church. America magazine has a rare interview with the pontiff. In it, the Pope again addresses why the church needs to change, saying, quote, "We have to find a new balance. Otherwise, even the moral edifice of the church is likely to fall like a house of cards, losing the freshness and fragrance of the gospel." Such a great turn of phrase. Apparently, that message is resonating here in the States. A recent Pew poll shows nearly 80% of U.S. Catholics view the Pope favorably. And I have to say, it's so encouraging to see these remarks and just to watch the way that this Pope lives his life, I think, is an example to Catholics and non-Catholics alike. I am not Catholic, although my mother is, and I find him incredibly inspirational. There was a great quote for him also on the role of women in the church, and he says, "The woman is essential for the church. Mary, a woman, is more important than the bishops. We must therefore investigate further the role of women in the church." So encouraging stuff there, and it seems to me, with his change in tone and emphasis and his sort of inclusiveness, the Republican Party could actually learn a lot from the way that he is handling himself as Pope.
Yep, no, they're definitely members of the party. But you know what? That could learn something from this message. But I think this is a message that every person should be reminded of. And Pope Francis has this incredible ability to make people feel accepted and feel included without actually changing the doctrine and policies of the church. And this interview, in my mind, was just another example of him viewing people from the eyes of Jesus. It's such a simple message. Stop judging people. Let's just start loving people. And this is something that he said that hit home for me. He said, "A person once asked me in a provocative manner if I approved of homosexuality. I replied with another question. Tell me, when God looks at a gay person, does he endorse the existence of this person with love or reject and condemn this person? We must always consider the person, and we must always consider the person, and we must always consider the person." I love that. We must always consider the person. I think that is his focus to really push this new balance, as he talks about, to allow people to feel included, everyone should feel included.
One of the things that's not getting enough cred or notice out of this interview is he says one of his favorite movies of all time is Fellini's La Strada, a widely loved 1954 picture that won an Oscar for foreign language film, I think the first foreign language film Oscar. It's about a strong man, that's Anthony Quinn, who buys an assistant, a young girl, and they go together through Italy in search of answers about what life is all about. And what this tells me ultimately just is that this is a more worldly pope than any one that we've ever had before. And that's why he's willing to do things like suggest perhaps we should have a church that doesn't try to control people's lives, but lets them control their own lives.
Right. Yeah, I look at it a little differently, I think, than both of you, in that I don't think he was actually saying let's love people who happen to be gay and change sort of our focus on what their life choices are. I mean, the church is very strict about those rules. What I heard was an actual return to more classical doctrine of saying, let's be equal and fair. Let's be equal and fair. Let's be equal and fair and mindful about what it means to be sinners. He says in the very beginning of this discussion, I am a sinner, and we know that there's a lot of church teaching in that realm. And the problem, I think, goes deeper, and it's something that people have a hard time talking about, and maybe because I'm not Catholic, I have less of those concerns, but it's homophobia. But it's homophobia. But it's homophobia. It's homophobia in a conservative strain of world religions, particularly Catholicism and Christianity, and to some degree other religions, Islam and Judaism as well. But focusing on the Pope, that homophobia has led to a double standard. Whereby the, quote, sin of a gay lifestyle has been treated in departure from doctrine as if it were a greater sin than greed or infidelity in a heterosexual relationship or other sins that people commit. And so what I heard from him that was very interesting here is, as someone who's watching from the outside, because I'm not at all a part of this religion or even claiming to be deeply knowledgeable about it, but was seeing this person who, as I understand it, has a connection to God and the teaching, who is holy, saying, let's return to an equal treatment of all sins and love the sin.
Well, and
get away from the word he didn't use, but the word that I think is there, which is homophobia that is masquerading as some sort of religious
and that was my point of him trying to encourage the church to see people through Jesus' eyes, getting back to that message. But I took it as him taking a step further, saying, let's not make these an issue. These shouldn't be an issue. We should just accept everyone and not even focus on these things.
Well, I think, as Ari's pointing out, he's not going that extra step of saying this is not a sin. He's just saying, let's not put this particular, what he calls a sin, above all others, which is a step forward, although, of course, it's not as far as we would want to see him go, but it is at least a step forward, and I think makes a lot of difference for people around the world.
To the gay community, I love you very much. If anything I ever said or did would lead you to believe that I have anything less than love and respect for you, I apologize.
Stephanie Samoy is an enthusiastic parishioner of St. Francis Xavier Church.
It's the gospel in action. It's
That's what it is. We're living the gospel. People are living the truth of Jesus. We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life.
Founded in the late 1800s, St. Francis Parish was an early leader in fighting for black civil rights and nowadays welcoming gay Catholics.
Perhaps some people come to St. Francis Xavier because they don't feel judged.
Stephanie Samoy gets the message.
I can be fully who I am there in relationship with my partner.
Which is why, for more than a decade, St. Francis parishioners have marched proudly with a church banner at New York's colorful Gay Pride event.
It's important to reach out to all the people on the sidelines watching and those in the march that there is a Roman Catholic Church that welcomes you.
But this year, that welcome mat is at least partially rolled up. After a year on the job, New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan said no more church banner.
Is it difficult for you to tell them that because people like carrying the name of the parish?
Absolutely, and I knew this would hurt them deeply.
What did I think? I was like, hell no.
The Archdiocese declined to explain, telling CNN it had no comment.
Your name is important. I'm called by my name. The Church of St. Francis Xavier, when we hand out those brochures to say you're welcome, they need to know who we are.
Father Costantino says he thinks the Archbishop is concerned about some marchers who promote
promiscuity. That's the word I was. Our people are not supporting that at all.
So parishioners decided to march with a banner anyway, a blank banner.
For me, the blank banner stands for we've been silenced. You know, we're silenced. This year we're silenced.
Instead, marchers are wearing T-shirts bearing the church's name. On the internet, one blogger said parishioners were, quote, defying the Archbishop. Another said the lifestyle championed by gay pride parades is not a Christian lifestyle.
It is obviously an issue about church authority.
Sociologist Michelle Dillon says the Vatican sends mixed messages, welcoming gay Catholics while calling homosexuality a, quote, disordered condition.
On the one hand, the bishops asserting their authority, but even when they do assert their authority, it's not clear that they're going to win. So it's really a no-win situation all around.
For Stephanie Samoy and her fellow parishioners who love their pastor and their church, they hope next year their banner won't be banned.